So I was working with a client a couple of years ago from Spokane, and I heard this story. This manager decided to be pretty creative and do some recognition and reward and praise in his staff meeting. So he started calling out individual employees with a word of praise and then tossing a candy bar to each person. And so, hey, Debbie, great job on the client issue that came up last week. Super good work on that. Threw a candy bar out to her. Hey, John, really good work on that report. You spent a lot of extra time on it. I really appreciate it. Threw out a candy bar. Well, there's 14 people in this guy's group, and he got to the 12th person, threw out the candy bar, gave the praise, and stopped, was done, and went on to the next subject. And everybody was having such a good time. And then apparently this silence fell upon the group, and everybody was appalled. The people who didn't get the candy bar, of course, were embarrassed, and everyone else was embarrassed for them. Well, I heard about this through a couple different sources, so I had a conversation with this manager and asked him what was up with this, and his answer was, I didn't have a word of praise for these other two people, so I stopped.
This sounds like a stupid question.
Probably is, because, go ahead. Skilled managers equals high morale, which equals all that cool stuff that you cannot pay for and you can't punish for.
When you close off that feedback channel, you are not going to be able to hear the truth.
In the first microseconds, your brain can't tell the difference between physical danger and what we call social danger.
I'm pissed off at you.
Me, specifically?
Well, just because you're my boss and all.
Employees tend to get promoted until they reach their level of incompetence. Go forward and don't suck.
Welcome to yet another episode of the Managing with Mind and Heart podcast, where our goal is to help managers not suck, at least not as much.
Hey, this is Mike Nash. I'm the dad.
And this is Ethan Nash, and I am a son of Mike Nash.
And we are going to spend some time during this podcast finishing up our series. Ethan, what have we been talking about for the last couple months?
So for the last month or so, if you're following the plot, we've been talking about feedback. We've been talking about giving specifically corrective feedback, right? So I would say often when you're reading articles or listening to podcasts, the focus is on corrective feedback because that is typically what people think of as the tough type of feedback to give, right? It's the hard one. That's the one that causes defensiveness, which can make or break morale and engagement in your workplace. But today we're going to talk about positive feedback. And because positive feedback, I feel like often gets overlooked in the literature. And giving positive feedback is an art form as well.
Yeah, it really is. And let's take a couple of minutes and talk about why it's so important that managers actually know how to do this and engage in this kind of behavior. What do you think, Ethan? Why does it matter so much that managers know how to give positive, recognition, praise, appreciation, etc.?
Well, I think to start with, you can just look to the research. For instance, I know there was a Gallup survey. They found that 67% of employees whose manager focused on their strengths were fully engaged in their work, and that's compared to the only 31% of employees whose managers focused on their weaknesses. So right there, we're talking about engagement. Giving people praise and recognition and recognizing good work helps with engagement.
Exactly. Engagement, praise, recognition, appreciation creates greater employee engagement, which is this sort of golden egg we're always looking for, right, is engaged employees. Another thing that we can't overlook is that the willingness to give your employees praise and recognition actually builds trust and respect and adds bank account to this relationship. And this is really important because employees come to work and they have this boss, and there's part of them, and we've talked about this here before, that's concerned. Does this person, are they in my corner? Do they have my best interests at heart? Are they on my side? Do they think well of me? We are actually hungry for people who have authority over us to like us. It makes us feel more safe. Mm-hmm. And so giving appreciation, sincerely, recognizing good work, showing appreciation, that actually builds relationship, and that becomes a really proactive bank account deposit for the future.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, here's another reason why giving positive feedback matters and recognizing good work. So they ran this study, and by the way, I found this study in an article in the Harvard Business Review called "The Feedback Fallacy." Real good article. I will link to that in the show notes. So essentially, in this study, scientists split college students into two groups. Right, in one group, they gave positive coaching to, and then asking the students about their dreams and how they'd go about achieving them and what they did to this point to get them to their success, right? So then the scientists also took another group and looked at their homework and their studies and asked the students what they thought they were doing wrong and needed to fix. So, and then why these conversations were happening with the students were hooked up to an fMRI machine. Just kind of see what parts of the brain were most active in response in these different sorts of situations. So the group that they focused on what they were doing wrong, the sympathetic nervous system lit up. All right, and that is, we've talked about this in some other episodes, that's your fight or flight system, which it's often referred to. And then, it essentially, this part, mutes other parts of the brain that allows us to focus only on information that's most necessary to survive, right? So your brain responds to critical feedback as a threat and therefore narrows its activity.
Yeah, it shuts you down in some way.
Shuts you down. And we've talked about that, so if anybody's, has followed our episodes, they know that. Now, with the group that the group that had to think about what they were doing right, were they doing right in their lives that got them to this point? Their sympathetic nervous system was not activated. Instead, it was the parasympathetic nervous system. That's a tough word to say.
It is.
Which can be referred to as the rest and digest system, right? And so this system, what we know about it is it stimulates adult neurogenesis, which we've also talked about on this show, right? So growth of new neurons. It also stimulates a sense of well-being, better immune system functioning, so that just general well-being, and also cognitive, emotional, and perceptual openness.
And leads to more creativity.
Well, exactly. The perceptual openness, employees need to think about what they're doing right and why it's working for them. And forget just employees, people in general, right. In order to grow, in order to innovate, in order to think outside the box, in order to solve tough problems. So giving your employees positive feedback allows them to be creative, which allows innovation in your workplace, allows problems to get solved and things to get done, which ultimately has effect on your bottom line.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. And a couple other, and that's incredible. And I love the research on this. Here's a really obvious reason we need to be able to give praise and recognition. It's just rewarding behaviors that you want to see repeated, right? It's just basic classical conditioning, if you want to look at it that way. Dogs and dolphins and human beings tend to repeat behaviors that get rewarded. Mm-hmm. So if you want more of that good thing,
right, give them a candy bar.
Throw them a candy bar, right? We'll get back to that in a minute. But yeah, reward people through a recognition, praise. It really does hit the reward center of our brain when we get praised. And actually, especially, believe it or not, from somebody who has a power differential over us.
Mm-hmm. Now, when I was first learning about, how to give effective positive feedback, I thought to myself, okay, it's like, duh. It's like, yeah, duh, give people positive feedback, right? But it's not that obvious to some people, right? And I think that even those that it is obvious to, they can still kind of botch it. So, another study found that 81% of employees say they did not receive any reward or acknowledgement for an increase in productivity.
That they would not. Yeah, they're in that study, their belief was they would not receive any kind of praise or recognition for doing better or more work.
Which basically means they've come to the conclusion that when they're more productive, it's not getting noticed or recognized.
Right. Which is very demotivating. Another thing around this whole concept of giving positive feedback, et cetera, there's actually some resistance to it. And I don't know if this is the time to mention this, but I just want to ask our listeners to consider your own bias, your own mindset around this. For example, there are people that kind of lean away from it. I will say inadvertently in this case. These are the people who kind of have the attitude of, honey, I told you I loved you when I married you. I'll let you know if I change my mind. Why do we need to keep rehashing this? It's the leader who just doesn't think of it. It's just not on their radar. They don't. It doesn't present itself as an opportunity for them. They just miss it all the way to people who actually have a bias against it.
Like, you mean biased against?
Well, everybody gets a trophy and people get a paycheck. Why should they need praise?
Right.
And you guys are, kind of needy. These people who need recognition. Why isn't just doing a good job reward enough?
So touchy-feely.
And I have a message to you. If that's you, listen carefully. Okay, stop what you're doing right now. Just listen to me.
Okay.
Are you listening?
I'm fine.
You're wrong. I got to tell you, I think you need to do some work to work against that bias. I get it, but you need to work against it because we're not talking about needy people here.
Exactly.
We're talking about human beings. We're talking about evolution. We're talking about brain chemistry. We're talking about what just is, what motivates human beings.
Recognizing good work motivates human beings. One of my favorite stories that demonstrates this point. So many people would agree that, when you think of touchy-feely type people, they probably wouldn't first think of NFL football players, right?
First thing I think of.
NFL football players, right? So one of Dallas Cowboys' famous coach, Tom Landry, there's a famous story about when he got hired to coach the Dallas Cowboys, and they were a terrible team at that point. And basically within a year, he just turned this team around. So while other teams, were watching game film and reviewing missed tackles, plays that went wrong, instead, this coach made a personal, after every game, he made a personal highlight film for every single employee of what they were doing right.
Every employee.
Sorry, well, they are employees.
Yeah, you're
they
right.
Are employees.
You're right.
Of every player, of what they were doing right, and sat down with the players and said, right there, look at what you did.
Oh, that's cool.
Look at what you did. What were you doing there? What was going through your mind there, right? And it turned the team around. I mean, I'm not saying that's the only factor.
Sure.
But that's just to demonstrate that everybody benefits from understanding what they did right.
That is did you make that up?
No, I didn't make that up.
That's a really cool story. I'm going to use that in class, I think. That's really cool.
Yeah. So all that being said,
well, let's reiterate, right? So it creates engagement, motivation, more of the good behaviors, builds trust, builds respect, meets some basic human needs. I mean, the list goes on. And so I just want to make sure we roll into this podcast with the idea that this matters. This is not touchy-feely. It's not extra. It's not fluffy. This is actually part of being a good manager. And when you go back and look at those top 15 management skills based on research, and we talked about that back in maybe the first or second episode, this is one of them. This is number 10 on our list. It's praise and recognition and appreciation.
Absolutely. So, Dad,
son,
let's go into the model, right? Because in our class, we do talk about positive feedback, and you have kind of a specific, a few areas of types of positive feedback. So let's talk about that, and I'll kind of let you take the wheel on this one.
Yeah, we're gonna talk today about kind of how to do this and some techniques and some things to avoid. But there's 4 categories I'd like to just mention briefly that we'll cover. There's what we call merit-based unscheduled feedback. It's a kind of a complicated way of saying, I noticed you doing something well, or you accomplished something, or you did something good, and I noticed it and I said something. And that can be an email or a thank you or a little note card or a gift. It can be lots of different things, but it's merit-based, somewhat spontaneous, not programmed or anything like that. That's one category.
Okay. And that's coming from
the boss, from the manager to the employee.
Okay.
Right. Second category would be more programmed recognition programs. employee of the month.
Oh, I see.
Different sort of programmed in things. An annual bonus that's based on good work.
Okay,
programmed.
So like checkpoints almost
that are already
if you were
established.
to hit this checkpoint.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. So that's a second category, and there's research on all of these and their efficacy. The third one is just for breathing, and this is an interesting category. This is because you work here, because I'm your boss and you're my employee, and I want to have a relationship with you. I just find opportunities to show appreciation. It might not. This one's not about specifically. This person did something well. This is I just appreciate you. For example, you just bring a really good vibe, a positive vibe to the workplace. I really appreciate that.
Okay.
Right.
So help me parse out that one and the first one then. It sounds very similar.
It does. And they overlap a little bit because it does sound like the just for breathing, you're appreciating them for something. Right. But it's more about their characteristics. It's more about who they are. It's not about a thing they accomplished or something they did well that week. It's more about something they just bring because they're there.
Right. So is it safe to say that with the first one, it's more on a specific task that they accomplished or something they did, and this one and this other one is more specifically about just their characteristics,
who they are,
their personality.
Yep, who they are, right. And then the third category, which is a really broad, the fourth category, which is a really broad category, is remembering that your team, your group also needs recognition and praise as a group,
as a unit.
It's not unrelated to the first three categories, but it is different, and it's another opportunity to build a positive workplace culture.
Okay. So let's go back to that story you were telling from the very beginning. I thought it would have been that last one, right? It looked like it was about to be that whole, recognizing the whole group as a unit, maybe, but they left out some people there. I guess what category does that type of feedback fall in?
This is the fifth category called don't be a sucky manager.
Yeah,
that's what that category is.
Yeah.
And I
it's the
shouldn't
official
say that.
name.
Yeah, I don't mean to say that. We all make mistakes, and actually, this guy's a great guy, and he has a few challenges in the way he manages. But
as we all do.
Here's a place where he kind of missed it, right? So the idea of coming to a meeting and having some kind of fun recognition for everybody in the room is a really great idea. I think he started out on the right foot. There's a couple things, obviously, he could have done differently to make that actually not the cringe fest that it turned out to be. Obviously, he could have just continued on and finished up with two more people, right? And my challenge to him when he said I couldn't think of anything, I asked him to reconsider that. I said if you literally have two people on your team and you cannot come up with one thing you appreciate about those people, I actually think that's probably the manager's short-sightedness. I don't think it's really the fault of the employees.
Okay.
Unless these people are so terrible that they should have been gone a long time ago.
Right.
I just think that's unlikely that you couldn't have dug a little deeper and come up with two more things.
Sure. Well, the reason why I thought at first it could have, it almost fell into that fourth category of group recognition is because he was recognizing everybody together. I kind of thought would that not qualify as group recognition? It's there. He's recognizing an individual component of each person, but he's doing it as a collective group.
Yeah, this really is the first category. It's the, I'm recognizing people for doing good things, or it could have been the third category, right? I appreciate this about you. He could have done either one for each person. The reason it wasn't group, even though it happened publicly, is because group is about the group. You guys as a unit, accomplished this amazing task, and I'm really appreciative. That's what that fourth category would look like, right? So going back to this story here, right? So this person this manager could have added a couple more people to the list and just finished up and had a really good opening to the meeting that way. A couple other obvious things he could have done differently. He could have pulled way back. He could have just honored 2 or 3 people and kind of rotated that through at other meetings, found different. He could start every meeting honoring a couple people with just a quick little thank you type thing. So he could have gone one way or the other. Maybe lose the candy bars. I'm not. I have mixed feelings about that.
Depends what kind of candy bar.
Well, I guess it does.
Three Musketeer. Nah, I don't want that.
Oh yeah, those are terrible.
Those are bad.
Are those the ones that are like
They're like spongy.
Yeah,
almost.
that's right. They have the
they're
spongy, marshmallowy. Yeah, I like anything with peanut butter would be
course.
awesome, or Snickers.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Anyways.
All right, in any event, let's talk about our categories. I want to tell you a story. This first category, this merit based, like you've done something well, you said something good. I want to acknowledge that. There's so many ways to do that, and Ethan, let's talk about some ways to get to that. But let me tell you the story from the book Drive.
Great book by Daniel Pink.
Daniel Pink. Great book, and I think the subtitle of this one is the surprising truth about what motivates employees.
Yeah, the surprising truth about what motivates us.
Something like that.
Right.
In any event, a great story in there. And if you've been in our classes, you've heard this story. But so there was a study. They had an experimenter sitting at a booth, and there was a sign that said, come over here and make some money. And so these participants would come sit down and they would engage in this activity. And the activity was this: the experimenter would hand the person a written page, and the job of the participant was to find the letter A wherever it occurred and circle it. And this is supposed to be a boring, mind-numbing task. Now, the way it works is when that person turned in their page, they'd get money for it. So the first page they turned in, they'd get a couple bucks. Next page they turned in, they'd get $1.75. The next page, $1.50, all the way down. Now, the participants are probably figuring out that this must be an experiment about how much money is it going to take for me to keep doing this ridiculously boring job. That's really not what the experiment was. Here's the experiment. A third of the participants, when they turned in their paper, the experimenter would look at it and then say something like, good job, or well done, or looks great, and here's your money, and here's your next page. The second group, another third, they would turn their page in, the experimenter would look at it, say nothing, here's your money, here's your next page, right? And the third group, not even kidding, they would turn in their paper. The experimenter would not look at the paper, but would literally put it through a paper shredder right there at the desk.
Right in front of them.
Right in front of them. Yep. Now, the results of this experiment, some of the results were not surprising. Some of them were. Which group do you suppose did the most pages?
Probably the one that didn't get their paper shredded in front of them.
For sure. And it was the first group, right? It was the group that got the good job, the word of praise, the word of appreciation. They not only did more pages than the other two groups, a whole bunch of these, I don't remember the stats now, but a whole bunch of these people actually went all the way down to where the experimenter was saying, here's your 25 cents, here's your next page. And these weirdos were circling the letter A on that page, basically working for free. Okay. Now, the second group, who received no word of praise, the average person stopped well before they could have made more money. They basically left money on the table. And I think that right there is really incredible. You have the difference between people leaving money on the table versus people working for free. And the only difference was good job.
Right. And in both situations, the task was more or less meaningless.
Yeah.
I mean, not that that matters in a work situation, but yeah.
And the third group, right, the paper shredder group, they did statistically, they did the exact same amount of work as the second group. There was no difference between the group that got no recognition and the group that got their paper shredded, which tells us that if you really want to demotivate your employees, you don't even have to destroy their work right in front of them. What do you have to do?
You just have to ignore it.
Yeah, just don't say anything.
Right. Well, that's powerful.
It is.
That is really powerful right there.
Yeah, the power of recognition and praise to create motivation and more good work and goodwill. Yeah. You can't understate this.
Yeah. I mean, this is there's a huge field of research on, motivational psychology, and this is kind of square one.
Yep.
By the way, Daniel Pink does a TED Talk based on that book, Drive. I'll link to that in the show notes as well if you guys want to take a look at it. Okay, so we're talking about the categories. That relates to category number 1.
Merit-based, and let's talk about some methods to do this.
Okay, yeah. Methods to give merit-based recognition.
Yep.
Well, you tell me.
Well, let's start with some things not to do or to be careful about, right? Hey, really good work, Ethan, on that newsletter last week. But I would have liked if you would have had this article up near the top.
Okay, so it's the but there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's the but.
So, and this is where it gets tricky because we talked about this on probably 2 episodes ago on feedback of giving constructive feedback of if you can find something positive and it fits, mix it in, before you give the negative feedback there.
Yeah. Yep. And so you want to make sure, and again, this is repeat from a couple times ago, but yeah, if you're going to do a positive and then follow it up with a negative, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, throwing something positive in when you're correcting is great. Mm-hmm. Number one, make sure it's in the same zip code. That one was, right? Newsletter, right? It was in the same zip code. But the word but says what I just said doesn't really matter.
Right.
Right. So you want to replace that with an and or full stop. Mm-hmm. I really like this newsletter. Better yet, I really like this newsletter for these reasons. Mm-hmm. Here's what you did well. Mm-hmm. Full stop.
Right.
Here's something I'd like you to do differently next time.
Right.
Okay. That to me is a much better package than the first example.
And that's assuming that, you really liked part of it and didn't like another part of it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, let's talk about you just generally, you like the product altogether, right? You mean, just because you don't always have to find something, corrective.
No. In fact, if you're the kind of boss, if you're a manager who only does the positive when you're doing a negative, you're actually setting yourself up for a really tough time with your folks, mm-hmm. right? Number one, you're basically creating this reaction whenever you praise them. They're going to be like, oh my gosh, what's coming next, right? And plus, it doesn't sound genuine if you're only coming up with something positive when there's going to be a negative. And what this podcast today is about is that the idea that we need to be giving positive feedback all by itself, not connected to the negative, right? So I just want to get that out of the way that if we're going to mix it in, let's mix it in well, but let's not just mix it in. Let's talk about giving praise and recognition just because, right?
Right.
So here's another thing to think about when we give praise. Hey, Ethan, great newsletter last week.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Not very effective, huh?
No.
Why is that?
Well, because I think for one, I don't know what specifically about it is good. And then also, it doesn't necessarily give me a roadmap to repeat those behaviors in the future.
Exactly.
And ultimately, as a manager, as a leader, you want your employees to repeat, like we said, behaviors that you like, or the behaviors that are beneficial to the group, to the company, to them.
Yeah, I think that Dallas Cowboys story, right?
Right.
This coach is telling them exactly what they did right.
Yeah, exactly. And so saying great job or good job isn't always enough. And actually, this was another point in that article I talked about earlier, the feedback fallacy by Marcus Buckingham and Ashley Goodell. People, they need to think about what they did right. So you need to talk about behaviors, right? Specific behaviors. So what could you say then instead? Why don't you try to give me that positive feedback again?
So pretend that I liked your newsletter.
Pretend like you actually liked it and you had good things to say about it.
All right. No, I did. So Ethan, the last newsletter, I think was the best one you've done yet, for lots of reasons. I thought the connection between the articles and the video and the cartoons was just seamless. It was all on the same theme. I thought the part that you wrote was just well written. I could show you more specifically what I liked about that writing if we had it in front of us. The cartoon you picked was great. The layout was very attractive. I just think pretty much everything about that newsletter clicked for me.
Awesome. And here's what I think is even, the cherry on top with giving that positive feedback. You say all that, which is awesome. I'm thinking about the specific things that you liked about it. And then what if you were to say something like, hey, what was going through your, oops, dropping things. What was going through your head when you were doing that? Or where, what part of your day did you do this? Like getting even more specific of like, what was your state of mind? Did you do this in the morning? Did you do this, in the evening? How long did it take you? An hour?
Basically, you're saying like even inquire as to why is it so good? Like,
right. you're getting the employee to really have to put effort into thinking about, what was I doing that made it so good? Was it that I, got some exercise that morning, or I had a good breakfast, or
I learned something. I went to a seminar,
and I spent some time reading, or and they may not have a good answer, because a lot of these things, it's like, well, I don't know. I just sat down and did it, and it's good because I'm amazing. So
what if I said, Ethan, why is it so good compared to just the sucky ones you put out previously?
I don't know if we want to go down that road.
All right. Hey, some more thoughts on giving this sort of merit-based positive stuff. Yeah, this seems really obvious. So, send an email, write them a note, put a card on their desk. They're all really good. We have discovered, of course, that even the little yellow sticky note is a little bit more powerful than the email, because it shows that you had to get up out of your desk and walk over there. It shows a little bit more effort. Don't stop emailing. I'm just saying. There's some types of reward that are a little bit more powerful. It's funny, years ago, we were talking about this in class, and this woman said, "Oh, don't bother to send me a note or a card. I don't need praise to feel good about my work." And as she was saying this, her boss, I looked over at her boss, and her eyes looked huge. She looked shocked. And so I chatted with the boss later, and she says to me, "Hey, come here." And she took me to the workstation of this woman. All over her cubicle walls, guess what's hanging up there? Every card she's ever received from her boss. And all the bosses she's had previously are all hanging on her wall. So, don't tell me that it doesn't matter.
Right.
Call outs in the meeting. Sometimes people get embarrassed by that. I don't like spending a lot of time, just singing someone's praises in public. It can get too much. But, the occasional, hey, great job, Debbie, on that thing that you did last week.
Right. Can I pause on that point for a second? Public feedback, public positive feedback. So, there should be a balance there. Doing it too much, might not be great. So how do you balance giving people positive feedback in public while also trying to be fair and not show favorites, right? Like, say you have, you have a few star employees. How do you balance giving them feedback in front of everybody without it making seem like you have favorites, but also without being disingenuous and just being like, well, I gave them positive feedback. I better balance it out by giving these people that aren't doing as good work positive. It just seems like it's a tricky situation.
It really is, and I think in this topic of positive feedback, it is probably the trickiest piece. How do you strike that balance? Couple things. I would say, let's start with understanding that some people are more comfortable and some people are less comfortable with receiving positive feedback publicly. Because of that, I would, for one, kind of get to know my people. I think that'll help. But also just keep it pretty low key. If I'm going to do positive, just a quick shout out, a quick mention, avoid the whole, hey, Doug, stand up,
right?
Come on up here, try to avoid making it a big stinking deal, right? Just a comment here or there is enough. Secondly, I would say, be mindful of the balance. If you've got this person who really does a lot of good stuff and they just happen to be in a job that's sort of public facing, and so they end up getting a lot of kudos, maybe not mention them so often, just pull back on that one. And remember, you got the person who works in the back office who no one ever notices, who you might need to kind of take some special effort and figure out a way to honor that person publicly every so often. So there's not a great answer to this other than just try to keep it somewhat balanced over time. Don't overemphasize, the public part of this.
Right.
Now, something that's kind of related to this, though, is I might compliment you, Ethan, in an email, and I might CC your boss. If that wasn't me, right? I might call you out publicly that way, which is a really cool thing to do, is to, share credit with somebody else.
What if you CC'd the employee that you wish were like this employee that you were giving positive feedback to?
Say that one more time.
So you could, if you're giving positive feedback to one of your employees, you CC the not so good employee that you would wish was like this employee, so they could see what would happen if they stepped their game up.
Why can't you be more like your brother?
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
It'd CC your brother.
Studio survey says no.
Okay, just kidding.
But this merit-based, I just want to say this. You got to get it on your radar. People need to be recognized for, and let's talk about topics, right? We've got a job well done. We've got good customer service, right? We've got a report. A person stayed late. We got somebody who made a sale. We got somebody who helped solve a problem, who gave a good idea. I mean, when you stop and think about it, the list is endless.
Right. Let's go on to the next category.
Let's do it.
So that category, again, was
merit-based, not programmed, more spontaneous. Here's the bottom line, and I'm going to kind of skip ahead by saying this. Of the 4 categories we're talking about today, according to research, the one we just got through talking about is the biggest one. It's the most important. It's the most powerful. People need to get recognition and praise from their direct manager for the things that they do well. It's the most powerful way to motivate employees to continue doing good work.
Right. And yet, a renowned writer, Dr. Gerald Graham, he authored a couple textbooks, pretty well known, just in the management world. Wrote a book, Management, the Individual, the Organization, the Process. Sounds like a real page turner. Anyways, in his studies, he's found that manager initiated reward, recognition, praise, although it is the most important and the most motivating for employees, this type of recognition happened the least often, while company-initiated rewards and recognition and praise happen most often, which doesn't have as significant of an impact on employee engagement.
Right.
And Dr. Graham also found that, he did a study with about 1,500 employees in different work settings, and they were asked about what motivates them to stay engaged at work. 87% said recognition and praise. So
yeah, that brings us to our second category, which is more of the programmed, company-based recognition, which and I've got a little bit of a soapbox on this. We're talking right now about, Employee of the Month and kind of kudo awards that come from the company, end of the year awards. What was the name of on the Office show? They did the end of the year.
Oh, the Dundies.
Right.
The Dundies. Great episode.
That would be a great episode to watch if you haven't seen that one yet. There's a couple of those out there. But in any event, let me start before I start dissing on this, let me just say there's a place for this, right? As an add-on, as an extra, there's some company life and some culture building that can come from kind of an end of the year award thing. There's certainly a lot to be said for company-based like bonuses for good work. That's fantastic. Right. There's something cool when the boss's boss notices something good, right? Which is not really programmed.
There's also metric-based rewards.
Yes,
like if you're, I used to work in a sales environment. We'll still kind of do. There's metrics that you hit, and you would get. Sometimes there was a company outing that you get to go on. So
there's actually a place for all of that, and I don't want to sound like I'm dissing it. I just want to say that we have to be careful with it. Partly for this reason, I've seen too many companies who get their employee survey back that says recognition and reward and appreciation is low. Employees are feeling that. And so the administration says, well, let's fix that. Let's put together some company-wide program. And it never scratches the itch. And the reason it doesn't scratch the itch is because what they fail to do in those cases is train the managers to be doing the spontaneous, merit-based individual stuff. That's where the big bang is. And so
creativity, innovation.
Yeah.
Those are the things that you can't really reward through company-based merit.
Yeah. And the company isn't noticing those day-to-day positives. It's the manager who sees that this person worked extra time or had a really good customer interaction, or that's where, and so what I'm saying to a lot of companies is, before you spend your energy and your money and your time on creating some kind of wide system-based, motivational system, please impress upon your leaders and your managers in training how important this is, and teach them how to do it, and make sure that your managers understand the importance of one-on-one appreciation. That's where the big bang for the buck is. And if you also want to do Employee of the Month or some of these other merit-based programs, go ahead. They add to the richness of positive workplace culture. They make employees feel good, but they cannot replace that first category.
Okay, I see. So it's in addition to that first category that we need to handle. Okay, well, let's move on from that one then. So the next category of recognition in praise is...
This one is, we're calling it just for breathing. That's not really accurate. We're calling it just for working here. It's not exactly merit-based, and this one's a little bit tricky to parse out. It's, again, the manager's ability to notice things about their individual employees that aren't necessarily an accomplishment. It's not necessarily a extra work they did or some report they spend a bunch of time on or some good customer interaction. This is actually more something about that person's character.
Okay.
Now, side note, you might remember, listeners, that we said in one of our recent podcasts that we're not giving feedback about character. Remember? We're giving feedback about behavior, the impact of that behavior, and replacement behavior. But that was when we were talking about
corrective feedback.
Here's the cool thing. You almost get to break every rule we gave you before. Not every rule, but you can break almost every rule when you get to the positive. And let's kind of revisit that concept in just a few minutes. But one of the real rules that we're going to break here is it's actually okay to give positive feedback about what a person generally brings to the table, which is often a character trait. Okay. Ethan, I really appreciate your positive attitude you bring to work almost every day. Right now, if you can follow that up with a couple behaviors, that's great. But you don't have to.
Right.
You don't have to. I really appreciate. Man, you're just so honest, right? I know I'm always know you're going to shoot straight with me.
Right.
So this might seem like it's a pretty close to the first category because you're kind of recognizing and praising, something they did. But in this case, it's a little bit more about, I'm just wanting the managers out there to remember that you can notice general characteristics about your people and point those out. And it's a little hard to do this, I've noticed. I think it feels a little vulnerable to notice something about another human being and saying something good about that. But I tell you what, it really honestly touches the heart of people when their boss notices these kinds of things.
And different people are going to respond differently to that type of specific feedback. Like you said, some people are more comfortable with it than others. Doesn't mean it doesn't feel good to them, right? Meaning that I've given that feedback to, when I had employees, I gave that feedback to, a specific employee, and it was kind of like,
they get embarrassed
okay,
right.
It was really awkward, but it still feels good. And then I'd give it to a different employee and it was like, oh, really? Thank you very much. I appreciate you saying that. So don't correct too quickly just because people with different personalities, behavioral styles are going to react to it differently there.
Yeah, that's true. And this is also another type of feedback, not just avoid doing this one publicly. This isn't in a group. I really appreciate, Ethan's ability to just be positive, because that kind of then, well, what about me? Am I a negative Nelly?
So you're saying the rest of us aren't, right? You rest of us are liars or
right. So these kind of character call outs are more private and they're maybe a little more few and far between. I think if you do a lot of this, it can start to sound disingenuous.
Right.
So, but it can be super powerful to notice these characteristics about your people. So
what do you think the danger is, if any, of doing too much of this type of feedback, right? Character type feedback and not doing enough, merit-based feedback, right? Because I've seen workplaces where it was, the head is in the right place, but what could be the danger with doing too much of that? Not enough the first.
Yeah, I think the balance is important. I think, again, the first category tells the employee specifically and behaviorally what it is they're doing well and what they're specifically where they're succeeding. So I think that's why that needs to be in place, right? This other one gets a little bit more toward just you being here is a really good thing for us. And I think that's important too. So I think it's a really important balance.
Right.
Now, what we don't want is you're just awesome.
Right. You're just awesome.
You're just great.
Maybe once in a while.
Yeah, once in a while, but that's not even really you're not doing behavior. You're not even doing character.
No.
You're just the word awesome. Well, how am I awesome? Now, am I awesome because I bring a positive vibe to staff meetings? That feels better.
Yeah.
Or because I accomplished this report in 3 hours as opposed to 2 days. Right. So.
Okay. Good. Fair enough. So now we move on to the fourth category, which is company.
Group.
Right. Group positive feedback. How do you? Wordsmith is a little better for me.
Yeah, this is really, in a sense, it's kind of a combination of the first 3 categories, but it's directed at, I've got 10 people that work for me, right? And in my case, that's true. I've got these 10 folks, and it's really fun to be able to get that group together and just say, as a group, we're rocking it. You guys are, in these different various ways. Now I can do that merit-based. Hey, you guys accomplished this task or completed this project in record time, and you missed nothing. It was awesome, right? There's sort of a merit-based to the group. It can be more of a characteristic. Man, you guys are always just so positive, or you guys are, as a group, you guys really gel. I mean, the teamwork here is incredible. Right. It could even be sort of program based. Hey, you know what? We hit a milestone.
Yeah.
Let's reward ourselves. I brought some pizza in or whatever. So the thing about separating this as a separate category is just to remind you guys out there that it's not just about you and your individual employees. You are also, by focusing on this kind of positive feedback, you're building team culture, which has far-reaching implications for the health of your organization.
Sure.
And motivation for individuals.
There's something really powerful about being able to celebrate with your team, with your group, right? And I'll tell you what, for with coming from a sports background, there's no better feeling than even just in a practice when we had a really good practice together as a team. And even when you have a really good practice together at the team, it doesn't mean that everybody performed at their best, their peaked level. But collectively as a unit, we perform really well. There's nothing better than celebrating with your team together, going out for pizza, being recognized by the coaches that, hey, this was a good practice despite, a few mistakes here and there. That's powerful.
I would disagree that there's no better feeling. I can probably think of some better feelings.
Well, why don't you nod?
Okay. But no, I totally agree with you. In fact, I like the way you worded that, because it's like maybe not everybody did their very best.
Right.
But what you're saying here is that we're better together.
We are.
This team is actually vital to the success of this organization, and you guys rock. And there's a whole different kind of pride that people take in that.
And some days, you're going to miss some of the blocks, and other days they're going to pick up the blocks that you missed, and we still did well as a team. So recognizing that not everybody has to be perfect to get that type of recognition, to get a win, I think is important.
Are you talking about blocks in football?
Yeah,
Are you still on sports.
I'm still on sports. It's just the way the lens I look through the world at. Not always.
Yay sports.
Yay sports. All right, like sports, and we don't care who knows.
So we mentioned a little bit ago that you get to break all the rules, and I just want to really quickly address that. What I meant by that was, when you're giving the corrective feedback, we got to be a little more careful, right? You're on shaky ground, maybe you're more tender to be able to point out someone's deficit or a place where they could have done better. It's important that you do that. It's important that you again, go back and listen to the last couple episodes. It's really important that we see it as an art when we give corrective feedback, because you got to find a way to stay connected and to not create defensiveness. When you're giving positive feedback, on the other hand, you just get to be a little bit more, free and loose with it, right? So, the old rules were things like don't do corrective feedback in email. Well, go ahead and use email,
right,
for positive. Now, again, it's a little more effective to show up in person or write a note, but if you don't have time for that, send an email.
Sure.
Can't talk about their character and the negative side, including words like rude.
Right.
On the positive side, break that rule.
Right.
about their character.
When we're talking about giving corrective feedback, we say, don't do a monologue, open up a dialogue. It's like, okay, if you're giving positive feedback, go ahead and monologue about the positive feedback. Now, obviously, to an extent, it might not be effective. Like we talked about earlier, open up a dialogue of having them think about, what they did right in that situation, if it's that type of feedback and situation. So
yeah, but if you want it to just be a literal standalone positive with no dialogue, do it.
Yeah.
Drop a positive on them. You don't have to stay and talk.
Right.
What was another one? Don't use always or never.
Yeah.
Throw it in there.
Right.
Yeah, you are always really positive, in staff meetings.
Sure. Now, on that note, can you overdo positive feedback? Can you overdo that? I mean, giving feedback on, say, trivial things or too often, I would think could take the power away when someone actually does an excellent job or even a good job, right? I feel like that might build cynicism if you're the type of manager that always going around giving tons of positive feedback. So then people can't differentiate when they actually did an excellent job from just another day of you walking around, being Santa Claus.
Yeah, I think that's really good. In fact, I wish we'd had done behavior styles already. And just a note to our listeners, we're going to, in the near future, we're going to put out a series based on this concept of behavior styles, which is kind of how we show up and how we're perceived, and it's kind of personality based. We're gonna get to that, but if we had done that, I would say there's some of you out there that should not listen to this next piece, right? Those of you who are already kind of the honey I told you I loved you when I married you people who see positive feedback as fluffy and touchy feely, don't listen to this.
Or even just see positive feedback as only deserving when there is absolutely outstanding work.
Yeah, way above and beyond.
Like you have to go big. You have to go to the moon before it's recognized.
Yes, if that's you, then skip ahead about 20 seconds on the tape.
You still listen on tapes? I didn't even know we released these on tapes.
Okay, shut up, Ethan. So yeah, here we go. So we've got to be careful. We don't. I just want to say yes to what Ethan just said. Don't, if you're running around constantly giving positive, and that's 50% of your dialogue, and you're, especially when you're not correcting people too, you're just kind of running around doing positives, it just dilutes it. It loses its punch. It loses its effectiveness. So yeah, we don't want that to be this our kind of the only tool in our tool belt. Absolutely. Now, on the other hand, and I ask this question sometimes in class, I want everyone in class right now to think about the last time you can remember that you went up to an individual employee and said, I really appreciate this particular positive thing you bring to the table. Mm-hmm. And I have a lot of managers who can't remember the last time they did that. So I don't know what the average is out there, but I would say let's at least get this on our radar. Let's make sure we're actually looking at those 4 categories. Let's make sure we're using those categories, that we're not off balance with this. But yeah, don't run around and do a lot of false, fluffy, not specific praise.
Sure. And this may just be me because of my behavioral style and personality, but even when you said earlier, you can kind of break all the rules when it comes, mostly break all the rules when it comes to giving positive feedback. So to say, use hyperbole, say always, like to me, sometimes I might think, well, I don't always do that. This is disingenuous, and it doesn't feel like real feedback. Positive.
I'm going to stand correct on that one. I think if it's always, say always. Literally, sure. If it's always. But you're right. Don't do hyperbole. I'm gonna retract that one. So don't do hyperbole in negative or positive, because it does call into question, I think, the veracity of that feedback. So so there's a rule not to break.
Right. Now granted, some people wouldn't think twice about that if you said always when it was just most of the time. They would think great. But for someone like me, I would think, no, I don't do always.
Yeah.
They're lying.
You would find the one time where you didn't do it. No, that's good. Yeah, but other rules you can break, right? The public, you're not supposed to be giving corrective feedback in public. Obviously, it's okay to do a little bit of public call outs on the good stuff. So the idea is we don't have to be quite so concerned about getting it right. Mm-hmm. Just do it.
Yeah.
Just do it. Be the kind of manager that notices the good and makes a comment or an email or a whatever.
So, final question before we go into just a quick Q&A. and we'll talk more about that in a moment. Not everybody's good at giving positive feedback, right? And a lot of managers out there, including myself at one point in time, didn't give positive feedback. So if you're not in the habit of already giving positive feedback, but you now know and understand that you need to, how do you start? How do you roll this out? Right? I mean, employees may think, you became possessed or something if you walk into the office start day and just start praising everybody.
Yeah.
So how do you roll this out in a way that is
genuine?
It works.
Yeah. Well, can I start with what not to do? And this might seem obvious, but don't come to work and say, "Hey, everyone, I'm going to be working on this." This is one of those do it, don't tell it things. So don't say I went to a management seminar, and don't come in and say, "Hey, I really apologize. I haven't been giving positive. Now I'm going to start." That's actually going to work against you, because now when you start doing it, they're going to go, "Oh yeah, he's doing that because he went to a seminar.
He read a book.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's one thing. I'd also say go into it gently. Go into it. Don't start blasting the positive around the office, because that's going to look like you said, like like
right.
possession. That wouldn't be demonic. It'd be like angelic possession.
Yeah,
it'd be kind of the opposite. But So this would be, for example, your next round of one-on-ones. Right. Just make yourself find one thing.
Yeah.
For each person. Right. One thing. And you haven't been doing that before, so it might. It might cause people to kind of wonder what's going on, but it might not. It might feel kind of good and not overkill, right? One comment in that one-on-one, right? There's an example. You also might want to wait till the next staff meeting and just find one thing.
Yeah.
Hey guys, really good work on the project last week. I was really impressed. And then move on with your meeting. Right? I mean, that's that's what, 5 seconds?
Yeah.
So I just think if it's not something you're doing normally, go into it slowly. Don't overkill. It's more likely that way that people will see it as just you working on being a good manager, as opposed to you doing some sort of temporary fad.
So start slowly, phase feedback in maybe over a few weeks.
Yeah, and you're never, if it's not your forte anyways, you're probably not going to ever need to worry about becoming that person that's running around being Pollyanna. So don't worry about it. Just try to find your rhythm, try to find your balance. Another thought on that is, when you are correcting somebody, also try to remember to point out something positive as you're correcting them. That might be something you're not doing yet. You might want to throw that in there. Now, again, don't just add that, but not add the positive feedback as standalone. Right. Because that's going to kind of work against you.
Right. And again, don't add the positive feedback when giving corrective feedback unless it fits, right? It's in the same area code.
Exactly.
I just want everybody to remember that.
Yep.
Okay, folks. I hope you get why giving positive feedback is important. If we don't understand already, I want to talk about one more study that demonstrates this. IBM's work trend survey of over 19,000 workers in 26 different countries across industries and thousands of organizations. They actually revealed that the engagement level of employees who receive recognition, we're talking about engagement, right? The golden egg here. The engagement levels of employees who receive recognition is almost 3 times higher than the engagement level of those who do not.
Wow.
So just remember that. And if you if you need to know why engagement is important in the workplace, go back to our first couple episodes.
Perfect. All right. Well, that was great. Based on popular demand, we're going to be adding a new segment to these podcasts, and we're going to be doing a question and answer, just a really brief, you send in a question, we provide a pretty brief answer. Sometimes I think those questions are going to spur us on to maybe create a whole podcast on those subjects.
All right. Well, I have some questions for you then, sent in from our audience. Now, we'll keep the name of the organization and the name of the person who sent the question is
confidential.
Confidential was the word that I was.
Is that the word you're looking for there?
There. So, anyways, we got this question from somebody named Barack Obama.
Okay.
Whoops! I was trying to keep our clients
I have
Confidential.
no idea he listened to our podcast.
Oh, anyways, here's the question. Our lines of communication at my job seems a little messy to me. My questions are these. If an employee has a problem in their job, should they be able to go to their boss's boss for advice or help, or should they be asked to go to their direct manager first? And the second question was, should a director be tasking an employee who is 2 levels below them with an assignment, or should she go through the employee's direct manager first?
All right. You're just talking about basic kind of chain of communication. And I think this really is an example of a podcast that we should probably do. There's a lot that could be said about this. So in just a few seconds, we'll say, generally speaking, with exceptions, generally speaking, my boss should have an open door policy for me, and I should go to that boss for all sorts of things. My boss's boss should have a half open door policy for me, which means my boss's boss should be a lot more thoughtful and strategic about which things she allows me to bring to her. So if I'm skipping my boss, going over my boss's head and complaining about something in my job, I want something to be different, I'm having a problem. Generally speaking, with a few exceptions, that boss should ensure that I go back and have that conversation with my boss. And to the degree that that person jumps in, meaning the boss's boss jumps in and starts tinkering and fixing and stuff, that can have really troublesome implications. In a way, what they're doing at that point is kind of kicking the legs out from under my boss by jumping in and getting involved with something that they should be referring back. Now, there's a whole bunch more nuances and some other kind of exceptions on that. And then the second question, should my boss's boss be tasking me with things? Again, with exceptions, generally no. Generally, they should be going to my boss. And because my boss is the one who knows what's on my plate, they're the one that's air traffic controlling my work to some degree or another. They need to be the one that's sort of a buffer between me and that higher level boss. Now, again, there are exceptions, so we'll revisit this at another time.
All right.
Good question, Barack. Very good question.
Thanks, Barack, for sending that question. We miss you. So the second question that we got was from a Luke Skywalker. Actually, yeah, okay. The question... I'm just reading the question here, folks. My employee just announced that she's pregnant, and I'm concerned that her energy and focus will be compromised, which would impact her productivity. Should I fire her? Oh, Luke. Come back to the good side.
Luke, you are on the dark side. Luke, that is a stupid question. There are such things as stupid questions. Go talk to HR. Do not fire this woman. Go talk to HR, and also go talk to HR.
Yeah, and do some really deep soul searching.
And folks, send us some more questions.
Yeah. So we're out of questions, unfortunately.
We're out of time.
And out of time and of questions. Send us questions. Hit us up on social media, or you can send your questions to contact@nashconsulting.com. All right, folks, that is all we have for you today. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Keep listening. Leave us a review. That's what helps other people find us. Anyways, goodbye, folks.